Welcome to Detracking.com. If this is your first time visiting the site, wanted to say welcome and thank you for visiting. If you are a site member or a repeat user, welcome back. And we are always happy to see you here. I hope you learned something new from the video. So my name's Rose. I am a doctoral student at the University of Virginia, and for my doctoral project, I'm studying detracking. And I really developed this site because of my interest in the field of detracking, but also because of my concern about the divide between researchers and practitioners. There's some amazing research out there, but unfortunately, it very rarely makes it into the hands of the people who actually need it. And that was one of the goals for this site, was to bridge that researcher-practitioner divide. So this site was designed for teachers, school site leaders, and parents who are interested in detracking to have a place to come together and build community and to share resources for detracking. The site was also developed for the rest of us, people who don't quite know as much about detracking or about academic tracking and just want to learn a little bit more. So we're going to start with some terminology. Maika Watanabe is a researcher who studies detracking, and she ran a teacher working group on detracking. About half of a year into the teachers working group, she asked teachers, how tracked do you think your school is? Their answers were wildly different, and Watanabe realized that although everybody had the same formal definition of tracking, the teachers actually had really different operational definitions. We don't want that to happen on this site, so we're going to start right away with defining some terms. So when people think about academic tracking, they often think about the old days. So they think about this idea of college prep tracks and vocational tracks. So these were rigid systems where students had very little choice in what they took, and if you took one class in the vocational track, you would take all of your classes in the vocational track. Well, that old system came under attack during the civil rights era, and we moved to what we have now, which is a flexible tracking system. So in theory right now, you could take a remedial English class and a high-level math class. So you can take classes at different levels in different subjects. In reality, that doesn't happen very often, but because that's the formal policy at a lot of schools, now when we're talking about tracks, we're talking about the number of levels of courses that are offered in a subject. And when we talk about tracking, we're talking about the collection of courses that students take. Detracking is another term that people often get confused by. So a lot of people think that when we're talking about detracking, we're just talking about increasing students' opportunities to attend higher level courses. And that's actually not what detracking is about. Detracking is about decreasing the number of levels of courses that are offered at each grade level. So if a school had 4 levels of freshman English and they moved to 3 levels of freshman English, we would say that school is detracking. We would only call a school detract if every student at the school in every grade level was taking the same courses. So if every 11th grader is taking the same English class and the same math class, then that school would be completely detract. That's pretty rare, so in general, we just talk about schools that are detracking. Now, I know what you guys are really wondering about, which is, why does anybody care about tracking? So when we think about segregation, we often think about segregation that occurs between schools. So that's where you have one school in a district that's primarily white and another school in that district that's primarily black. So that would be between school segregation. But segregation doesn't just occur between schools. It also occurs within schools through academic tracking. And to understand that, we're going to take a moment just to talk about the history of high school. So the comprehensive high school that we're all pretty familiar with is a really new creation. Comprehensive high schools were developed at the end of the 19th century as a compromise. So at the end of the 19th century, high schools were reserved for the elite in the United States. They were a way that middle class and upper class parents could give their children a leg up in the employment market, give them access to high class opportunities. However, at that same time, there was an enormous influx of immigrants in the United States, and factories were taking off across the country. So these immigrant parents were working pretty miserable jobs in the factories, and they really wanted their children to be able to have access to an education that would allow them to have a better life than what their parents were having. The wealthier parents wanted to maintain the privilege their kids were getting through this school, and the low-income parents wanted to have access to that privilege. So the compromise was, we're going to put everybody in the same high school, but we're going to offer some kids a college preparatory track where they're going to learn how to be the managers and the owners of factories, and be taught high-level thinking skills and interpersonal skills. And we're going to stick other students in a vocational track where what they're going to learn is how to work on a factory floor. So we're going to encourage them to be docile. We're going to focus on obedience and on low-level thinking skills. So for anybody who thinks that tracking has gotten better in the last 100 years, I am sad to say it really hasn't. So research that's been done on tracking continues to show that tracking perpetuates racial inequities. So tracking is prevalent at schools across the United States, and tracking decisions are made in an incredibly arbitrary way. So don't believe whatever you've seen in a program guide. In reality, tracking decisions are often made by teachers or by counselors. They're based on recommendations, or they occur due to parent advocacy. So a student might have done really, really badly on a state test. Parent wants them in the higher track class. They're going to get that. A lot of times, parents don't even know that their students have been placed into a lower track class or really aren't on track to go to college. There's a lot of confusion around the tracking process. And there's a lot of really talented Black and Latino students who are counseled out of going to these high-level classes. Teachers will say things of, oh, I'm just not really sure that that's right for you. So as a result, what we find is that Black and Latino students are very much underrepresented in the higher level courses. So based on their test scores, based on every piece of data we have, we should be seeing a lot more kids in these higher level courses. And we should be seeing a lot less white kids there, based again on their achievement data and other data we've been able to gather. What tracking is doing is creating a white and wealthy track for students and a Black and Latino and low income track for students. And those two tracks are very separate. Students typically don't take courses at multiple different track levels. They don't tend to interact that much often, even across tracks. So as a result, while students are attending these really diverse high schools, they're actually attending completely segregated classrooms within these high schools. And if we really believe in diversity and we want our students to grow up and become successful in diverse workplaces and in this diverse world, then we need to do something about it, because we are not teaching our students how to be successful in a diverse society, because right now all we're actually doing is sticking them in these segregated classrooms. So that's what tracking is, that's what detracking is. Now let's talk a little bit about this website. So this website was designed to build content knowledge for teachers and school site leaders and others. One way that the site does this is through the page that we're on right now, which is a research page. So the research pages have highlights and abstracts from a lot of the really pivotal research that's been done on academic tracking and on detracking, as well as on school integration. So that's to build out their content knowledge. We also want teachers and school site leaders to build out pedagogical knowledge. So pedagogical knowledge is knowledge of teaching, and teaching heterogeneous classrooms can be really challenging. So we have some tips in here and very, very concrete advice from researchers on how do you actually make this work. So those tips range from things like how you interrogate beliefs about achievement to what does it mean to teach less and let students learn more, with actual examples of what that looks like in real classrooms. Our goal for this is that teachers and other users of the site will build out their pedagogical content knowledge around teaching and detract. And that framework comes from TPAC, which is Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge. Another important framework that was used in designing this site is the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines. So as you've seen when I went through the definitions and background knowledge on tracking and detracking, we really tried to provide multiple means of representation here. So to clarify the vocabulary that we use and to activate and supply background knowledge, and then also to highlight patterns, critical features, big ideas, and relationships, which we've also done through this page here, How to Detrack, that synthesizes a lot of the findings from the research. The most important part of Universal Design for Learning for this site, however, is provide multiple means of engagement. We really want to encourage our users to collaborate. We want them to be smarter together. And we do that through a resource bank. So this resource bank is a wiki, kind of like Wikipedia. So any member of the site is able to upload their own resources, to tag them, and then to comment on other people's resources. And so just like on a site like Wikipedia, this allows for crowdsourcing of great resources and great information about detracking. We don't just want to have teachers and other users collaborate, however, we also want them to build community. And so we've built in a wide variety of social features to this website. These social features include forums, they include groups, and the idea is that teachers can come together and build a community around detracking. And that is all the time that we have for today. And I just wanted to say again, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to see you on detracking.com.